In this episode, I talk with international dressage rider, trainer, and author David De Wispelaere. We talk about his love for horses and his thoughts about the dressage world and what makes him and his horses happy. I found him to be a kindred spirit, and I'm so happy to have connected with him. I loved our conversation, and I think you will too. So here we go, episode 149, Listening to Horses with David De Wispelaere. Hi, I'm Karen Rolfe, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So, let's get started. David De Wispelaere is an international dressage rider, trainer, and author. He has two books. One is called Riding with Feeling, and the second book is called My Horses Have Something to Say. Born in New York, he worked for many years from his farm in Belgium and is currently based in Wellington, Florida. He's trained several horses to Grand Prix, was two-time US Freestyle Champion, and competed successfully throughout the USA and Europe. He's trained with a number of well-known trainers, among them Gabriello Grillo, Dr. Reiner Klimke, Herbert Rehbein, and Arthur Kottas. David currently gives clinics in Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, Netherlands, and the USA. All right, let's go right to the conversation. We're here with David De Wispelaere, and David, thank you so much for agreeing to come join me on this podcast.
It's my pleasure, Karen.
So I knew of you, I knew of your name, and I'm sure I'd seen you at shows, from the dressage competition world. And I really took note of you later when I saw you riding on Gerrit Huysman's DVD, If Horses Could Speak. And I had come across that DVD at a time when I was really kind of changing what I was doing with horses. And I was taking note of people who, were beautiful riders and, especially not doing roller and things like that.
Right.
So then when sort of out of the blue one day, I got a Facebook message from you, I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And we ended up talking on the phone for quite a while. And I think, I don't know about you, but I feel like I found a kindred spirit.
No, for sure.
Yeah, maybe you can share what made you reach out that day.
Yeah, well, it was on Instagram, but I see your posts, and I really admire what you do, and I see a lot of we do a lot of the same things. We're looking for the same things. We want the horse to be happy and want to be with us, and it's funny you in one post you had a horse. I think you maybe had dismounted and untacked it, and you were carrying the tack, and the horse followed you. And I did the exact same thing when I lived in Belgium. A company came out. They were called We Horse at that time. I think it's changed now. Maybe that's the new name. But anyway, they did some films, educational films, and with one of my homebred mares. She was only 5 years old, but she was an old spirit, and I was in the habit of doing the exact same thing. At the end of the ride, I would dismount, it was in an indoor arena, and but the door at the far end was open, and I would take the tack off. I didn't have to carry it. I put it down on a bench right next to me, and she would follow me out and back to her stall. And yeah, I see a lot of similarities and things that you do and things that I do, and I just thought, I'd like to speak with you and meet one day.
Yeah, I think that would be certainly fun for me. And that simple act of untacking and then giving the horses, I think, some freedom and some choice.
Exactly.
And, there's a lot of talk about the happy athlete and, how do you measure that? I think that's one of the difficult things is how do you measure? Wouldn't it be interesting at the end of, an Olympic competition, you had to halt, dismount.
That would be really interesting.
And then leave and see if your horse followed you or not. That'd be an extreme situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's hard to judge some of these things using the current measures of success in the dressage world, but giving my horses some freedom and choice and seeing what they choose is very informing.
Yes.
No,
for sure. And and I think that's always been a goal for me. But even when I was competing internationally at Grand Prix, and I've refined I continue to refine my communication with the horses. When I look back at how I rode back then, it wasn't as refined as I would like to have had it, but I still, for example, I did an interview with Dressage Today back in the 90s, and I remember one of the things that I said was when I got on my Grand Prix horse Figaro that I never took him straight to the arena. We'd always go for a little hack first, and I would let him choose if he wanted to go left or right that day. So that's something I've been doing for a long time.
Nice. Yeah. It's interesting because I posted something around that recently in like a reel or something like that. And I was amazed at the range of the comments from people who are like, yes, of course. And I think what I wrote on it was you can't lead that which you cannot follow, or something very profound like that. But there were a lot of comments of, you can't let your horse get away with that, or they'll learn to just push around. And my reaction is just yours. It's like, oh my gosh, and when you look at how horses are kept traditionally and the life that they have so little choice.
Yes.
From going to the stall, to the arena, to the, maybe quote unquote turnout. But if you think, and to the cross ties, to the when I really look at my horses and I think, well, how many different opportunities can I get them to like choose to have a choice and have the freedom to express it. And I think something that comes with that is, what do you do when your horse chooses something that you don't want to do? And that's when it gets really interesting. Or when they choose to say no. Yeah. But I think it's worth finding out.
Well, and I mean, that's why the title of my book, that I know you've read, My Horses Have Something to Say. They should have something to say. They should have a lot to say, and it's up to us to listen. And that's something else that you and I really have in common, is that we like to give the horses choices, and I, a lot of people also look at what I do with my own horse and the freedom that I give him, and they think, oh, are you crazy? He could get hurt.
Oh yeah.
So my current horse that I bred, I mentioned Figaro, who was the horse of a lifetime. He was extremely talented, and my book is dedicated to him. And I made a lot of mistakes with him, and I learned. But anyway, I wanted to breed another horse like him, which is not possible, but I thought I'd come close with one colt that I've kept now. That's Florentine. And even when I had my own barn in Belgium, I know that Florentine is happiest when he's eating. And so I would ride him in the indoor arena, and also, by the way, we were a 7-minute hack from the forest between Belgium and Germany with endless trails. So we did a lot of trail riding too. But anyway, I would school him in the arena, and I would ride outside, dismount. There was a small patch of grass, and mind you, my property was fenced in, so it's not like he could get out on the road, but he could go to the mare barn. He's a stallion, but food is his first priority. So I would untack him and leave him there grazing, and I'd take my tack in and put it away, and I'd give him, maybe 10 minutes, and I'd take a carrot, and I would go out and call his name, and he would stop grazing, come to me. Again, I did have a carrot in my hand, so it wasn't just me, but and he would follow me into the barn, down the aisle, past 7 other stalls with the top doors open, and he didn't stop to mess with any of the other horses, and into his stall, and where his carrot was waiting. And one day I didn't have time to do this, to go get him myself. I had to get on another horse right away, so I asked my groom, my working student, I said, I'm leaving Florentine out there grazing, but I put a carrot on the hood of the tractor, which was parked nearby. So in, about 10 minutes, could you go out and take the carrot and show it to him and call his name, and then have him walk to his stall with you? And she said, sure, of course. So after I rode the next horse, I came back in. I said, so did that work? And she said, well, he took the carrot from the tractor and brought himself in.
Oh my goodness.
I thought that was so. He didn't even wait. He's like, well, I've had enough grass. I think I'm kind of, like to get to my carrots. And apparently he had seen me put the carrot on the tractor, and he walked over, took the carrot himself, self-service, and walked himself down the aisle and into his stall. And I just thought that was great. And I just, those are the things that make me happy.
I love that story.
And I just, and also trust, as begins with, we have to take the first step. We have to show the horse that we trust them. And how do you show a horse that you trust them if you don't give them freedom?
Yeah. Oh, that's yes, exactly.
And again, because they choose, they get to choose. And if they make wrong choices, then we try to correct them and show them what's right. And and when they make good choices and you reward them, then that becomes the habit. It's really not that difficult, but you have to, be patient and take your time, and that has to be the goal. Not how quickly can I get them to Prix St. George.
Right. I think a lot of times training horses is like the skill of getting horses to do things that they don't want to do. And my goal is more about the game of cooperation. So I another friend of mine who's a natural horseman, and he does a lot of liberty, specializes in liberty, and he has this thing called liberty as a lifestyle. And I thought that's pretty cool. And my place is set up like you had said, like the horses can be loose in the main area, but it's still safe and inside the property. And so we play a little game of we think if we need to put a halter on, but we do everything at liberty as much as we can. And it's interesting the times when I feel like, oh, I need to get a halter. It's usually because I'm rushing or the horse really doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, we got to just get this done. But I'm amazed at how cooperative the horses are, and how much, like you said, they kind of get what is happening. And if they're happy and calm and trusting, I find they tend to work with you.
Yes. in
very surprising ways. Like that story you told, like stuff like that just seems to happen a lot. And it's magical. And, I come in at the end of the day and I'll tell stories to my husband, and they're usually stories like you just told, like, you wouldn't believe it. I was just thinking I was good. I needed to move ovation. And then I looked up and there he was, and right where he needed to be. And yeah. And I think, in talking to you, it's so clear that you you love your horses. I think a lot of people will say they love their horses, but it's you feel the relationship and the being of the horse. And, your book, My Horses Have Something to Say, starts with a story about a top dressage trainer. I mean, really one of the highest level of successes in the world, who at dinner one night told you that he didn't like to talk about horses over dinner because, quote, he hated the stinking things.
Mm-hmm.
And, I read that. That's right at the beginning of your book. And I just that just hit me, because it's like he said the quiet part out loud. And I think there's unfortunately a lot of that in the horse world. And, it seems to explain a lot about how horses are treated in the competition world. And maybe not even competition, just there's a lot of that going around everywhere. But maybe can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was speechless. I didn't know what to say when he said, "I hate the stinking things." But of course, what went through my head was, well, that's interesting. Why did you choose them as your profession? And then, of course, I answered my own question in my head to myself. I said, well, it's because you make a lot of money doing this, and he also has a lot of stress and a lot of lawsuits that come along with it. But he's monetarily rewarded for doing bad things to beautiful horses, and it's sad. And you said something a minute ago. You said a lot of people say they love their horses, and we're like, well, it doesn't really show. But while I was living in Europe, I was offering some 5-day clinics, and this one young woman came from the Netherlands with her Friesian gelding, and and you could tell she really did love the horse. But in the first lesson or the second lesson, she said, well, my trainer at home told me that to teach my horse travers, I needed draw reins, roweled spurs, and a long whip.
Wow.
And this is, of course, after I'm saying, now just give a light touch with your leg and be soft with your hand, and all this opposite of what she'd been told. And during the 5 days, I also had one theory lesson, and I happened to have a DVD of the warm-up arena at the Dutch National Championships from some years ago, and you just saw a lot of these top riders, very successful, big names, riding their horses around in roll core, pulling on the curb rein, but at the same time they're talking to each other and laughing. So it's become such a habit to pull on the horse's mouth with the noseband cranked so they can't open their mouth, and pulling on both reins and putting the horse into very uncomfortable positions. And you know what? While I'm showing this, the young woman that owned the Friesian, she started to cry, because it was at that moment that she realized that she'd been torturing this animal that she loves. But, that's the problem, is that people see these successful riders, that's how they ride, and so then they think, well, I guess that's the way I should do it. And but it was at that moment, it was a big eye opener for this young woman, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so important to have a different model, because you're right. People, there's lots of people who they're just trying to do the right thing, and so they're looking to the, quote unquote successful people to do what they do, right? That it's being rewarded. It must be the right way to do things. And I had this assumption that everybody got into horses because like I did, like, because I was just a little girl in love with horses. And I know from your story, you were a little boy in love with horses, and
Mm-hmm.
just, it grew from there. But I think that's not a good assumption, because there's some people, I think, who just get into it because they like dominating things, or they,
Yes,
they,
unfortunately.
they like it for different reasons. I'm sure this is probably overly dramatic, but it's to make a point. I'm sure that slave owners, quote, took very good care of their slaves,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't, really honoring the individual beings
Right.
that they are. So I think but I love what you did. I think there are a lot of people who are into horses because they love horses, and they just, went astray, and to remind them to sort of step back and show, like, look, look at what you're doing. And I've had similar stories of taking a noseband, crank or a drop noseband off, and having people burst into tears, and I just throw the whole thing away. And
Mm-hmm.
they know on the inside, but they're trained themselves to, like, well, this is what the professional told me,
Right.
so this is what I need to do.
Yes. Yeah.
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 So there's also was a story in your book, when you were at one of the international dressage trainers clubs, and the horse was in a demonstration, and on a cool day, and sweating, and to you, obviously becoming more and more stressed out, and then I guess you pointed it out.
Yeah. The horse was grinding his teeth, wringing its tail, and um, yeah, and the president of the club took the microphone and said, "Yes, here we have a horse that's very happy to go forward and all positive things." And I raised my hand, and that's what you do at these meetings. And then someone hands me the microphone, and I said, "Well, I find this horse to be quite tense." I said, he's grinding his teeth. He's sweating too much for the temperatures that we have this morning and for the amount of work that he's done so far." And silence. And the president said, "Oh, well, I don't see that." And then it was actually a Dutch trainer that was standing in the back, raised his hand, and he said, "Well, actually, I agree with David." And um, so it was nice. That there was someone that was seeing the same thing I was seeing, um, and then after this horse did its thing, and a couple horses later, there was a nice 5-year-old Hanoverian that came in, and um, it was the same trainer, not the same rider, but the same trainer that was presenting the horse and talking about what they're doing. And I heard it was a German trainer, but in schooling the French up and coming horses and riders. And a German trainer standing behind me said in German to the trainer that was presenting this other horse, he said, "Oh, be careful, he might sweat." So they were making fun of my comment.
Oh, jeez.
It's like,
Yeah.
and I, at these meetings, I also often felt like a Martian. Like, doesn't anyone else see what I'm seeing? And and then
Yeah.
later on I said, well, and the horse is tense because he's being held in a very unnatural head and neck position by the rider, and he's having difficulty finding his balance, and this makes a horse very uncomfortable, and this is why he's tense and grinding his teeth and sweating too much. And then someone else said, well, David, how do you expect to get the hind legs engaged if you don't take the reins and put the horse's head down? Oh boy. Try riding back to front.
Riding back to
Uh-huh.
front.
Yeah, and this is all, this is very
Yeah.
old classical rules. Even it says it in the rule books, although unfortunately seems to be that the rule books are being changed a little bit too to
Yeah. I was I was just gonna bring that up. One of my favorite parts of the rule book, which I quote all the time, was Article 401. You know, the object of dressage, and I would recite that in front of dressage trainers and have them go, "Oh, that's really beautiful. What's that from?" And
Mm-hmm.
I go, "The
Mm-hmm.
rule book." You know, and people are like, "I've never heard that before." But yeah, they recently this is air quotes, reorganized the rule book, and they actually took that part out, the object of dressage, and sort of the qualitative and descriptions of the movements, the most beautiful part, and they moved it to a now they describe it as a guideline, and they put it in a section called useful documents. So I was
Mm-hmm.
going to ask you what your thoughts on all that is, because that just seems really
Yeah,
backwards
well, and it's
and heading in
also
the wrong
like in
direction.
the training pyramid, it's still rhythm is number one, and number two, it used to be relaxation. Now they changed it to suppleness. I think,
Wait, they did?
yeah, it's now
Oh gosh, I missed that
not
one.
relaxation,
Oh,
but suppleness. And okay, you and I both know that
oh my
a
gosh.
horse needs to be somewhat relaxed to be supple, except that now the horses are being bred with so much natural elasticity that they can be tense and maybe still look. Okay, so then what's the difference between suppleness and elasticity? For some people, some people think suppling the horse means pulling the head left and right.
Yeah.
Um, and but actually that makes the horse's body quite tight. If you're being attacked, you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
relax. you know. So
Right.
yeah, it's no things are changing.
And breeding horses with sort of a hypermobility
Right.
in the guise of suppleness, it's actually just flailing limbs, which makes them less
Exactly.
stable, and
Yes.
the
And
vicious cycle.
I mean, imagine if you put a lot of these riders on the old Tricaner, you know, they wouldn't put up with that. Those horses
Yeah,
would protest,
that's for
and a lot
sure.
of the warm bloods protest too. I've heard of for example, a student of mine in Germany who is also a journalist. She she contacted me a couple of years ago, and she said, I want to tell you about this horse. Maybe you have a student somewhere in Europe that would be interested. It was an approved stallion as a 3-year-old. It came out of a very well-known sales barn and was sold for like 300,000 euros. Um, and now the horse is in a sales barn in somewhere in the north of Germany, and you can buy him for 7,000 euros, and because he's unrideable. Oh boy, and a lot of these expensive young auction horses, you don't see them again, and it's
Yeah.
just sad because, um, yeah, they've been pushed and physically and or mentally broken down, and yeah, it's really a shame.
Yeah, they're bred to, be a dressage horse. But
Right,
that's, there's no such thing as a dressage horse. It's just we decided
right,
that's what they need to do. But there's the physical body, but
yeah,
there's so much else
yes.
going on. And
I bred Florentine to be a dressage horse, but he prefers jumping.
there, yeah.
And and I listened to him. Well, actually, he told me when I didn't listen, when I tried to talk louder than he talked, and uh, told him that he needed to do dressage. He let me know that no, this is not going to work. He's got a lot of. I mean, he's got a naturally cadenced trot, and I mean, when he was 6, he could trot an 8-meter circle and not miss a beat. But then one day I thought, well, he could go more forward, so I'm going to put spurs on. And then they're like, oh, well, now he's going forward, but he's leaning on my hand, so I'm going to start using the double bridle. Well, with spurs and a double bridle, and I tried to do this small circle, and he couldn't keep his rhythm because he tensed up against, these sharper instruments, and he really lets you know how he feels. He's like, oh, this is uncomfortable, I don't like this.
Well,
And
clearly, David, you
yeah,
needed
so
more suppling exercises in draw reins. I'm kidding,
oh,
but clearly,
why didn't I think of that? I know, and that's what a lot of trainers would have done. It's like, okay, well, now we're gonna put another contraption on, and now he's gonna do it. So I'm still learning from Florentine. He's 18 years old, and my goal with him was that he would be happy and healthy, and knock on something, I don't put any protection on his legs. He's barefoot. He's got clean legs, and I could ride him to the grocery store if I wanted to. I can. It's funny. There's the Land Rover Defender. It's like our Jeep Wrangler. It was a military vehicle originally, and they can pull heavy things, but they're not. They don't go very very fast. So I saw a bumper sticker somewhere in Germany, I think, on a Land Rover Defender, and it said, "I might be slow, but I can go anywhere." That's just like Florentine. He may not want to do dressage, but I can go. I can ride past loud machinery, and in fact, this morning I wished I had taken my phone out of my pocket and filmed it. I'm hacking around the block, and this real big truck came up behind us, and he slowed down because it's Wellington. There are horses everywhere, and most drivers are very considerate, and they're careful and don't go whizzing by you. But I don't have to shorten the reins or anything. It's like, oh my God, there's a truck coming. No, it's like, yeah, there's a truck coming. So what?
Nice.
And so it passed us, and Florentine started to, then he moved over, and because I made him go over to the side, and I'm still on the pavement, but anyway, as soon as it passed us, he kind of sped up and went. So I asked him to trot, and I said, "Go get that truck, Florentine." It would have been a funny video.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yes, he doesn't spook from trucks; he chases them.
That's hilarious.
So, and that's partly in his genes, but it's also, I've bred him myself, so I raised him, and we were stabled in a barn in the city of Aachen, Germany, when he was 3 years old, and there were a couple of small grass paddocks, and but only there was an indoor arena and outdoor arena, but no really place to hack. So I would ride him through the streets, and you could hack for about 20 minutes. You had to cross a major intersection. And you could ride to the forest of Aachen, again, endless trails. And I did that with him as a 3-year-old stallion. Just like, no, because he already let me know that he was bored if we went into the arena, too many times. He didn't really want to go forward. And so, yeah, so he's used to all of that.
That's cool.
So again, he might be slow, but he can go anywhere.
Yeah, it's, this idea that I think horses are perfect until someone comes along and asks them to do something that they can't do, right? So it's just a matter of listening to them and, changing our choices of what we ask them to do. And it's also a bit about, how do we measure success? And it sounds like, how you measure success has probably evolved over the years. I know it has for me, and it's something I keep asking myself, because I have to keep, I have been evolving, and if I don't notice that I'm evolving, I find I have this old measure of success. And often if I have a bad time with my horse, I realize I was trying to achieve that, and that doesn't feel good to me. It's like, okay, I got that line of tempies, but it didn't feel so good.
Right.
It didn't feel good on the inside. And so I
Yeah.
have to keep reminding myself, like, what's my measure of success? And every day, live up to that, and make sure I'm not accidentally or out of old habit trying to live up to somebody else's measure of success that doesn't feel right for me.
Yeah. I had a wonderful experience with Figaro in 1997 at the Nida Fall Show. It was a CDI, and we won the Grand Prix and the Grand Prix Special. And so, of course, I was thrilled with those results. But the real reward was that when I came out of the arena, and some woman that I didn't know came up to me and she said, "Your horse was the only horse in the whole class that looked happy." And that was a huge reward. Even had we been fifth place, that was great. That was wonderful to hear.
Nice. And was that the show that kind of led to you connecting with Gerrit Huysman? Was that the show?
No,
somehow that...
no. This happened later. It was, I think, 2005. I was living in Germany, and I was asked by there's an Austrian. She's a doctor, not a physician, but she's Frau Dr. Ulrike Thiel, and she's written some books. She's very much against roll cour, and she's written a couple of books. One is the English translation would be To Be Ridden. And so I think her speciality is to know what the horse is thinking. And so she had invited Gerrit Huysman and myself together with her to give a sort of a symposium. It was just one day, and in the morning each of us gave a PowerPoint presentation, and then in the afternoon we went into the arena and did some riding, and that was when I met Gerrit Huysman. During my PowerPoint presentation, he raised his hand. He said, "I have to say, I've never heard these words come out of a Grand Prix rider's mouth."
Wow.
Yeah, it was very. I feel fortunate that I was invited to take part in that symposium and meet him, and at the end of the day, he told me that they were going to be making a DVD, and would I be interested in riding in it? And I said, of course. So that's how that all came about.
Yeah. No, that was really cool, and it's such an important DVD. I think it made a big impression on me.
Yes.
It's like, there's people out there talking about this. Yeah. What are your feelings?
I'm not alone.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. What are your feelings of this? I don't know. There's like the sport, and then there's the art, and I always thought they were supposed to go together. But what are your feelings on the? Is there a chance for the sport? Can it be artfully done? What? What are your feelings on all that right now?
Well, it's a good question. And again, for me, I always thought it should be the same too. For me, dressage is number one in art form that just happens to be a competitive sport as well. And uh, one of my first dressage trainers was Tom Poulin. I was 19 when I took the working student position with him, and he just gave his notice to the USEF that he'll be retiring from judging at the end of this year. And he wrote a beautiful letter of resignation, and it's on his daughter's Instagram page, Elizabeth Poulin. But he talked about how for him also dressage is number one, an art form, and that's how he got interested in dressage, and because he was studying art. And yeah, it's really a really beautiful letter. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, is there hope? I think what needs to happen is that we need more really good examples out there in the show ring that are also appreciated by the judges. And I think I'm very happy to see Jessica Verndl van Breda with Dalera doing so well, because I think it's quite harmonious, and the judges are rewarding the harmony and the correctness, and so that's hopeful. But yeah, we still see a lot of very forced riding, but the horses are so talented that they can put up with it, and they still perform, and they get very high marks because they're so expressive. And so I think it's really up to the judges to reward correct riding. Okay, but then what is correct riding? Everybody, you and I have the same opinion on what is correct and what is incorrect. I mean, it should be, first of all, horse friendly, and what you see out there a lot is it's not very horse friendly, and you can see it in the horse's eyes, you can see it in their tail, and you can just tell if they're really under pressure and they're stressed, or if they're doing it with joy and ease. And that's that's the big difference. Like you were saying, it's like, yeah, I got those tempi changes today, but it didn't feel very good. And for me too, I would rather ride a training level test that felt harmonious than a Grand Prix that felt like a wrestling match. That doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm wrestling with the horse. And there was a time that I would get into wrestling matches when I was younger and less experienced. That's another thing that I had a conversation when I read that letter of resignation from Tom Poulin. I called him and told him how much I appreciated it, and I said, yeah, I'm back in Wellington since 8 years now, but and I had built up a big following in Europe, and it's not happening here. And I said, because people will take some lessons from me, but then they quit because they don't understand what I'm doing, and they think it takes too long. And he just right away, he said, well, they're not mature enough. And I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I think, it has to do with maturity. We should, as we get older, we should become more refined and more knowledgeable. And that's what's happening to me I'm used to be that my happiness was on, how many blue ribbons I could win. And now it's just, these really special moments, from the saddle or from the ground, when I notice that my horse understands me and wants to cooperate. And so that's what makes me happy.
Yeah.
And helping other people to find that with their horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of your book, you said something also that I could really relate to, and this is from the book. You said, "My horses are all healthy and happy, and that is enough. It's a beautiful feeling to be greeted with a nicker when a new working day begins with them. Perhaps they know I'm listening." Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have so it's funny you said, you live in Wellington now, and I thought it's so important that you're in Wellington, but I also thought, oh my gosh, David, you're just not a Wellington kind of guy anymore, I don't think. But hopefully you can have a positive effect.
Yes, and there are a lot of good things about Wellington. There are bridle paths. I mean, there's a fabulous trail system, when it's not 95 degrees and 98% humidity, like we're having at the moment. But, and you can do a lot of training on those trails. Some are grass, some are with, some footing. It's not soft. It's not really meant for training, but, and I ride a lot on the asphalt. I think, there's a nice test that I do with Florentine. I like to pick up a trot and sort of zigzag across the street, from the pavement to the grass, from the grass to the pavement, from the pavement to the grass,
Nice.
from the grass to the pavement, without him missing a beat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that his feet feel good, because he was barefoot till he was 14. He had no problem in Europe, but with the moisture here in Florida,
It's tricky.
His hooves got too soft, and now I have a really good farrier that gives some really good tips. For example, he said, well, you need to soak in the summer. You need to soak his feet in white vinegar. He said that will harden them up, and it also kills any bacteria. It's the bacteria that gets into the hoof that makes it weak as well. So I did have him shod for 3 years, but I didn't like the shape that his feet were becoming, and I'm like, this can't happen, because my goal was that he's going to get old and he's going to be sound and happy. So I said, just take the shoes off. That's so it's a good test of, to make that, I'm sure that his hooves are not tender. Yeah. If we can do that, trot from the grass to the asphalt and back onto the grass, and that he doesn't hesitate going from the grass to the
it's
to the
so
asphalt.
Good for their proprioception and just all sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's funny. I have a neighbor who's a trainer, and she had a young horse that was for sale and was barefoot, and he had actually trouble with his feet, and I trim a little myself, so I went over and helped, and he became sound. Mm-hmm. But when she showed him for sale, he passed the vet. The vet there was like, this horse is great, whatever. And then the trainer pulled her aside and said, how dare you show a horse barefoot? That's so unprofessional.
Oh my God.
So,
boy.
And this is a significant, it's a significant thing too, because the minute you shoe the horse, now it doesn't go out in the herd or with any other horse. So now it's socialization.
Right.
So there's huge ramifications just from a little decision like that. And of all the reasons why to put shoes on, because it looks professional, it's like
right.
I'm so shocked. But
this makes me think of it has nothing to do with the hooves or shoes, but when I was in that stable in the city of Aachen, there were a couple of German licensed instructors there, and I was starting a 3-year-old under saddle, and I had on the lunge just with either a halter or a lunging cavesson, and I heard afterwards someone said, "Oh, I heard that trainer say to her student standing next to her watching, saying, 'What is he doing? How does he expect that horse to learn to go on the bit without side reins?'"
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm like, again, try teaching the horse to push from behind, swing in its back, and reach into the contact. Oh boy. And she's a licensed German professional, so I think, they must teach them you must lunge with side reins.
Right,
I
right.
don't know. It's just,
Well, like I said, it's
yeah, no,
the
we're weirdos.
dressage has become the skill of getting horses to do things they don't want to do. Where, I mean, my measure of
Yes.
success is the horse understands what's being asked of it and he willingly offers when given the opportunity. It's like, there, he understands
Hmm.
and he wants to. And my job
Yes.
is to get him to
Yes.
want to, once he understands.
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, it's,
And you have to be creative. Not every horse learns the same way, just like children, I'm
yeah,
sure. Just um, yeah, you have to be open to figuring out what works for that horse.
yeah. So,
But that's what makes it interesting.
yeah. So, David, if you had a message to the dressage world, and there's kind of two, a message to the dressage world, but then a message to horse professionals. I don't know. You can pick one or both of those. Do you have a... Give us
Hmm.
hope, David. Share your wisdom.
Well, I think again, the title of my book is "My Horses Have Something to Say," and I think whether you're an amateur or a professional, I think it's really important that you listen to your horse. It's a two-way street. Um, Something that it came up when I had an interview with a Dutch magazine when I first moved back to Europe in 2004, and it just came out of my mouth. I just said my horse should be my dance partner, not my slave. And yeah, we talked about slavery earlier. It's not a nice thing, and and yeah, I have just as much respect for animals as humans, and I think the horses deserve respect and to be treated with respect and not used. It should be a partnership. Um, and it when you ride a horse or it, again, it starts from what you do with the horse on the ground, but it should be a dance, not a wrestling match, in my opinion. I never liked wrestling. I did like dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I like harmony. So,
Me too.
and there's also a German saying. It translates to this where violence begins, knowledge ends.
Mm.
So, and I none of us are perfect. Sometimes we lose our tempers and we get impatient, but I know from experience when that happens to me, I'm always very sad afterwards. I don't enjoy being forceful
No.
and dominating a horse or a dog or you know or a person. It's not rewarding. It's not nice, and it's not rewarding.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
I can relate to that. And I think that's when I was reading your book, they're just the heart of the book I just really connected with. And, it's full of stories, stories of all your horses from when you were a kid and all the way up to internationally competitive horses. And the theme I picked up on was just, to tell the story of the horse, but there was always this sort of mistake made, or, whether it was by you or by somebody else, and a mistake in the, something that went against the horse, and didn't serve the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And reading the book, I just was reminded, I tell people all the time, I have a long list of horses I need to apologize to. And, I try to learn whenever I get that feeling of like, that I didn't do my best, and that feeling sticks with me. And I'm trying to avoid that feeling by being present and trying to do my best and know where I'm measuring my success. And anyway, I just really appreciated the spirit, and the tone of the book was very humble. And I think that comes across just talking to you. It's from a very humble place, even from your great, depth of experience. But this quest to do right by the horse that's in front of you is really strong. So, and your love for Figaro really comes through, which is beautiful.
Yeah, he was an amazing horse. I first saw him when he was 3 months old, and I think I was 27 years old at the time, and I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't stop thinking about that foal. I had to have him. And I was very fortunate to have sponsors that enabled me to go to Europe, and like 3 times. But I had a lot of disappointments too, Twice I was sent. Once he was at FEI level, I was sent to Europe, and if the listeners might read my book, they'll hear the story. But 2 times I went to Europe to train with top trainers, and we got to our first horse show, and he pulled a suspensory. So we went through a lot together, and I think nowadays I could have avoided that had I known then what I know now. But that's the learning process. So
yeah,
and I think we should never stop learning, and we keep listening. We keep learning if we keep listening to our horses. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I think we definitely,
Karen.
I would love to visit with you, and I don't know, coffee, wine, just a horse. That's all we need. And it's so nice to just meet, like I said in the beginning, a kindred spirit, and just someone of your experience. And,
Yes.
You did a lot in the competition world, and have a voice, hopefully, among that caliber of rider and trainer. And I hope that what you're saying is heard. You listen to the horses and you use your voice. So I think the horse world needs more people like you, and especially with your experience in the competition world. You were in the competition world, but not of the competition world. And
Yes.
I'm so appreciative of you sending that message that day, and getting to meet you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen.